It's truly an honor to be here tonight. So what is the Internet Archive? To most of you, you probably think about the web and the book archive. To me, what I'm so fascinated by is a television news archive. 100 channels from 50 countries on 5 continents in 35 languages over portions of the last 20 years. One of the most incredible archives of visual storytelling of global events. Now, about a decade ago, the founder of the TV News Archive, Roger McDonald, reached out and said, how can journalists and scholars use this incredible archive to tell the stories of the world, to understand when we turn on the news, what are we hearing about and how is it framed? So one of our very first collaborations was to map the geography of television. In other words, when I turn on the television, where am I hearing about? And we actually made this incredible map. It was like raindrops on a map every time a location was mentioned. Now, this in turn led to something called the TV Explorer. So this idea of taking closed captioning, allowing you to keyword search that. So journalists, for example, could ask, how much attention is COVID getting right now? How much attention is inflation getting? All the major events, Ukraine, all these different events across the world, how much attention are they getting? How are they being framed? And in turn, you think about on television, it's not just a spoken word, it's the on-screen text that goes with it. So in the same way that books, you take a photograph of a book page and you use technology to turn that into text. We did the same with television, to extract all that on-screen text. One of the earliest examples that we did, we just took Donald Trump's tweets and we scanned for them across television news and showed how he was able to drive the cable news agenda from his tweets. Now, in turn, this begs this question of the connection between television and the online world. So one of the things we've done is, so here's a clip, this is CNN during COVID, and it just said from Russia somewhere. But where? What's the story behind this clip? So we showed how you can take a clip from television and scan the open web for that. And this text you see beneath was actually the description of the video when it first appeared in the web. So being able to connect across modalities. And also fact check them. So this is a fascinating example. We took a known fact check, so an existing fact check, and we used new AI tools to scan television news for any reference related to that. And this is really powerful as fact checkers to be able to say, where's this narrative gaining traction? So last year, when Russia invaded Ukraine, so Mark Graham at the Internet Archive championed this idea of how do we preserve, this is a huge moment. How do we preserve Russian, Belarusian, and Ukrainian television? And that led to this incredible archive of what were the narratives? How was this, how was each country telling this story at this moment? And so the archive then came to me and said, well, how do we make this accessible to journalists and scholars? We have this incredible, incredible archive. How do we make this accessible? So the first thing that we did was create something called the Visual Explorer. So we took each broadcast, and every 4 seconds, we extract one image, and we make a thumbnail grid. And so this is a broadcast. So you think about television, it's linear, it just plays, plays, plays. Well, by making it something like this, you can skim television now. So if I want to know, did Vladimir Putin appear anywhere in this broadcast? How much military imagery was shown? How often was the Z shown at this point? This is early on in Russian television. I can do that. I can scan all of this very rapidly as a human being. So remember also, sometimes the most powerful AI is AI that allows us, that amplifies us as a human being to be able to use our ability to understand and kind of gets rid of a lot of that grunt work. Now, of course, a lot of television across the world is not closed captioned. So starting early on, we applied Google speech-to-text technology to transcribe these into Russian and then use Google Translate to translate these in English. Now again, that's far from perfect, but it allows, thank you. It allows us now, journalists can go through this and say, well, what are they saying? How are they spinning these narratives? What are they paying attention to? And that's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And fast forward to today, we're using a new tool. So this is something, Google has something called Chirp. It's a large speech model. It's essentially sort of the new era of speech recognition. Recognizes over 100 languages, but what's most interesting about this and this whole generation of new tools, multilingual. So this is an actual broadcast. This is Chinese state television. 3 languages in 60 seconds. We've got English, Mandarin, Arabic in 60 seconds in this particular clip. All transcribed right there. This is incredibly powerful. For the first time, we can start studying how do multilingual societies tell their stories. It's really, really incredible what we can actually, the questions we can ask now. But of course, what makes television news so powerful is the visual dimension. If you took all of that television and you start looking at it like this, you start looking at all the stories across the world. But look at this, all the visual stories. So how can a machine help us make sense of the visual dimension of all of this? So we've been exploring how a variety of different AI tools can help us understand visual storytelling, not just the spoken word, not just the on-screen text, but the imagery, the visual metaphors. So one early question was to say, what if we took Russian television for a year and folded it on itself, compared every second to every other second? So we can actually trace clips and see how those clips are being reused. But more interestingly, visual metaphors, so things that are not the same, but have similar color schemes, similar visual styles. It turns out some really fascinating things you can do with visual metaphors. Now, facial recognition is a very scary area. So the way we've been approaching it is for major public figures, handing it a picture and saying, find others that look like this. So in this case, Tucker Carlson, we knew that he appeared a lot on Russian television, but how much? So we literally took his picture. We were able to track his appearances across Russian television. This is really powerful and document just how important he was to telling their narratives. But then we took an episode of 60 Minutes, that's a famous Russian show, and what we did is we extracted out every face that appeared on there, and who co-occurs with whom. Now this is really powerful. Who is telling the story? So we can see complexity here, but we can see Olga here at the center. She's kind of the star of the show there. We can see her at the center there. Now, we scaled this up to an entire year of that show, and we can see all these complex dynamics, but at the center, her. Now this is really powerful that we can take these tools. So traditionally when you think about it, it's just like, well, who's in this page? Or sorry, this image. What we're more interested in is questions like this. How can we use this to understand visual storytelling? Now, computer vision historically was predefined categories, about 30,000 objects and activities that machines can understand. So in the early days of COVID, we said, what's different about COVID television coverage compared to pre-COVID? The answer, books everywhere. But not on every channel. And this was really interesting to us. Now, this is really powerful, and we use this on Russian television to show military imagery in the early days of the war, and then as Russia realized it was losing, less and less and less coverage. And then they felt that they were gaining some ground, so then they start ramping up again. So this is a really powerful way of kind of understanding, like, how are governments portraying? Like, what, in this particular case, how does Russia feel about how it's doing on the battlefield? And this is really, really powerful, but still, it's a predefined category. I'm limited to what someone else came up with. So there are tools today, we have a demo of this, type in an English language description, like soldier in front of a flag, and it will find imagery that matches that. But, here comes the really cool part. What about the inverse? So we have a golden retriever detector. So this is part of the AI Explorer. It actually scans for golden retrievers on television news. So here's an example of one. And we asked the machine, describe this image. Everything you see there was written by a machine. This is where we're at today. This is really, really powerful, the ability to have a machine watch television and tell us about it. But there are a lot of limitations. What you're hearing mostly about generative AI today is the hype, the positives. There's a lot of limits. So hallucination, you may have heard that term before. So we handed a broadcast about the Chinese spy balloon and asked it to summarize it. And it became a nuclear-capable hypersonic missile aimed at the American homeland. Not quite what you want for television summary. False transcripts. It said NATO fully praises Putin and says he did a great job. Plagiarize, summarize. So sometimes you say summarize this, and it goes out and it finds clips from across the web of people saying similar things and glues those together. Now, bias is a really scary thing. So for about 60, 70 years now, we've had keyword search. So if you have a collection of biographies and you type in CEO, you're going to get the biographies that mention the word CEO the most. But nowadays, semantic search. If you run the same query with a semantic search engine, white men first, minority men second, women last. This is a huge issue that people are not really, everyone's kind of rushing to the space without realizing. If you ask them to make a summary, to re-summarize that, it's even worse. So these are really big issues to think about. Distraction. Summarize this Russian broadcast in English. Midway through, it sees a reference to Rome, gets distracted, and starts summarizing in Italian. And then this is a really scary thing. Machines are not really good at understanding. What country has supported Ukraine the most? Russia, because it's delivered the most weapons. These are really scary things that these machines can do. But there's still a lot of powerful things that we can do. We can take a day of COVID coverage and say, make a narrative map of everything that's being said and how it's interconnected. We can have a machine watch an entire day of Russian television and summarize it. Everything here was done by a machine. Summarize it moment by moment. But of course, why summarize? Well, because you want to do something with it. So we had it watch a day of Iranian television and said, find every reference to the nuclear accord, and any criticism, write a point-by-point rebuttal. Digital diplomacy, automated diplomacy. Now, again, is this the future of diplomacy and an amazing thing, or is this a really frightening future that has a lot of danger for society? These are really fascinating questions. Either way, this future is here, but it's our shared future. It's up to us to decide, because again, hallucination, all the limitations that goes with this and all the impact on society. Do we really want machines to be writing all this stuff for us? These are huge questions. And finally, I want to give a huge shout out to Tracy Jaquist. So she's the architect of the TV News Archive. I can't see where she is, but give her a huge shout out. So she created a really neat tool recently. It takes the on-screen text and then summarize it. You can go to archive.org, the television news archive section of it. Go there today, and you'll actually see this. And it's using this on-screen text and doing a live summary of what's being said on television each day. Again, the incredible power of making this content more accessible. And thank you so much. Hopefully this has been an inspiration to you of what's possible today. Thank you so much.